The human soldier stood tall at the center of the Grand Veltheran Hall. His name was Cole, and though his combat armor was scratched and plain, he wore it with quiet confidence. Around him, the alien nobles whispered and laughed. Their armor shone with golden lines and energy circuits, built to impress as much as to protect. But it was the alien princess who laughed the loudest. Princess Narila stepped down from her throne with grace and pride. Her armor shimmered like glass over silver fire, and the symbols of her family glowed faintly across her chest. She was tall, elegant, and known across the galaxy as a fierce warrior. Her voice rang clear as she looked Cole up and down. "This is the best armor Earth has to offer," she said, amused. "It looks like scrap from a mining ship." The nobles burst into laughter. Cole didn't respond. He didn't flinch either. His helmet's visor reflected her face, hiding his expression. Inside, he wasn't angry. Not yet. He had trained for this. He had been warned that Veltherans were proud, even arrogant. What mattered was not their words, but their actions. "I've seen better tech on children's toys," Narila added, circling him slowly. "Is this why humans rely on numbers? To make up for weak equipment?" Still, Cole stayed silent. But then he took a step forward. "My armor doesn't shine," he said, finally speaking. His voice was calm. "But it works. It's saved my life more times than I can count." A few nobles fell silent. Narila's smile faded just slightly. She hadn't expected him to speak with such quiet strength. "Then show me," she said, eyes flashing. "There's an arena beneath the palace. Tomorrow you will face one of our guards. Friendly combat. Unless, of course, you're afraid to fight in that." Tin can. Cole didn't hesitate. "I accept." The princess turned, her cape flowing behind her. "Good," she said. "Maybe then you'll learn what true armor looks like." As the crowd moved, Cole was left alone in the hall. The marble floors beneath him were polished, but cold. The air felt heavy with pride and challenge. He looked at his own armor, dull gray, battle-worn, basic human design. But it wasn't the armor that made him dangerous. It was him. The next morning, the palace arena buzzed with excitement. Nobles filled the seats, curious to see the strange human fight. Most expected him to lose quickly. Some hoped he would at least entertain them. But a few had begun to wonder, what if he was stronger than he looked? Princess Narila sat high above in the royal viewing box, her arms crossed. She looked down at the arena floor where Cole stepped forward in his human armor. It was the same gray suit they had laughed at yesterday, without shine or style. Across from him stood his opponent, a Veltheran guard named Krez, a giant among his kind. His armor was thick and heavy, powered by energy cores and reinforced plating. He carried a hammer twice the size of Cole's arm. The match began with the loud bang of a ceremonial gong. Krez charged forward like a beast. Dust flew under his heavy boots. He swung his hammer down with great force. But Cole moved fast, much faster than the Veltheran expected. His light armor let him roll to the side and dodge cleanly. Cole didn't try to overpower his enemy. He waited, dodged, and struck only when it mattered. He used the suit's small boosters to jump higher, slide quicker, and land sharp blows in weak spots, behind the knee joint, under the arm, near the neck guard. The audience began to murmur. Cole's armor, though simple, was smart. It responded to his movements without delay. It protected him just enough, without slowing him down. He was using it like a tool, not a showpiece. Krez, frustrated, roared and swung wild. One hit landed, sending Cole flying. Dust filled the arena. For a second, everyone thought it was over. But Cole stood up again. His visor was cracked, and his left shoulder sparked. But he raised his fists and walked forward like nothing could stop him. Then, with perfect timing, he jumped, landed on Krez's back, and pressed a shock trigger device into the guard's neck joint. Krez collapsed. Silence filled the arena. Princess Narila stood slowly, her eyes wide. The nobles were frozen, stunned. Cole removed his helmet and looked up at the princess. Sweat ran down his face, but his eyes were calm. "I told you," he said, breathing heavy. "It works." For the first time, Nerila didn't laugh. She stared at him for a long moment, then turned and walked away without a word. But her mind was racing. Who was this human? And how had he just embarrassed one of her best warriors? The sun was setting over the Veltheran palace. Its towers cast long shadows across the city. Inside a quiet hallway near the guest quarters, Cole stood alone. His armor was damaged from the fight, and he worked slowly to repair it using the small toolkit in his pack. He didn't hear the footsteps behind him. Soft, silent, but full of purpose. "I thought humans liked attention," came a voice. "Yet you hide here, away from the celebration." Cole turned and found Princess Nerila standing near the doorway. This time, she wasn't wearing her glowing armor. She wore a simpler robe, light and comfortable. Her long silver hair was tied back, and for the first time, her face was calm, not proud, not mocking. "I'm not here to be praised," Cole said, tightening a loose plate on his shoulder. "I'm here to observe and stay alive." Nerila stepped closer, watching his hands work on the armor. Her sharp eyes focused on every detail: the wires, the tools, the simplicity of it all. "How did you win?" she asked, not with anger, but true curiosity. "Our armor is stronger. Our warriors are bigger. You had none of our advantages." Cole smiled slightly. "That's the thing about humans. We don't rely on strength alone. We adapt." Nerila sat across from him on a low stone bench. "Adapt? You mean you change?" "Yes. We study. We learn. We survive by doing what others don't expect." She looked at him differently now. "You fought smart, not like a brute, like someone who reads his enemy." He nodded. "Your guard was strong, but strength without thinking is easy to beat." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "And your armor?" "It's basic, but it moved well. No glow, no power field." "Why not?" "It's not made to impress," Cole said, gently placing his helmet beside him. "It's made to get the job done. Fast, light, and dependable. We don't fight to look good. We fight to win." Nerila studied his face now, not just his armor. "You are not like the others we've met before," she said. "You speak less and do more." Cole raised an eyebrow. "Is that a good thing?" She stood up, her long robe flowing behind her. "It's rare. Rare things can be dangerous or valuable." Before he could reply, she turned and left, her words hanging in the air. Cole sat in silence, his thoughts spinning. The princess had laughed at him once. Now she looked at him as if he were something strange, something she wanted to understand. And deep down, he knew this wasn't just about armor anymore. The day after their conversation, the atmosphere in the palace was tense. Rumors of an uprising swirled through the corridors, carried by whispers and secret glances. Cole could feel it. He had been in enough battles to sense when something was wrong, when the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Princess Nerila had been distant since their talk, but he didn't mind. He was here for a mission, not for friends. Yet the unease in the palace bothered him. Velthera was a proud kingdom, but the sudden tension made him wonder if something darker was at play. That afternoon, Nerila called him to her private quarters. The door opened silently, and she gestured for him to come in. Her face was serious now, a far cry from the playful mocking she had shown before. "Something's wrong," she said, her voice low. "The palace feels like it's waiting for something to happen." "I felt it too," Cole replied, crossing his arms. "It's not just the warriors. There's something else going on, something hidden." Nerila's eyes narrowed. "You think the rumors are true, that there are traitors in the palace?" Cole didn't hesitate. "I don't think. I know." He explained how he had overheard strange conversations earlier that day, voices speaking in hushed tones near the palace's lower levels. The words were unclear, but the tone was unmistakable. It was a call for action. Someone in the palace was planning something, and it didn't look good. Nerila's face darkened as she listened. I've heard of whispers. Some of my generals have been acting strange, but I didn't think they would go this far. Cole stepped closer, his voice steady. We need to find out who's behind this. If we don't, it'll be too late. I agree, she said, a new sharpness in her tone. But I can't do it alone. I need your help. Cole nodded. What's the plan? Nerila moved to a hidden panel in the wall and pressed a button. The wall slid open, revealing a small old-fashioned datapad. She handed it to Cole. This contains all of the palace's security reports. You'll find the names of everyone who's been acting suspicious. I trust you to look through it without drawing attention. Cole took the datapad, his mind racing. If the rumors were true, this could be bigger than he had imagined. He had no doubt that someone was planning to betray Nerila, but the question was, who? As he left her chambers, Nerila's voice called after him. Be careful, Cole. There's no telling who we can trust. He didn't answer. Instead, he moved quickly through the hallways, his mind focused on the task ahead. The palace was vast, filled with secrets and hidden corners. But Cole had dealt with dangerous situations before. He knew how to find the truth, even when it was buried deep. It wasn't long before he found a quiet corner, away from prying eyes, and began scrolling through the datapad. The names on the list made his stomach tighten. These weren't just random guards. These were high-ranking officers, trusted men and women within Nerila's own circle. Cole's thoughts raced. If the traitors were this close to the princess, she might not even realize the danger until it was too late. The night was thick with the sound of distant thunder as Cole slipped through the dark hallways of the palace. The air felt heavy, as though the storm outside wasn't the only thing building. He had already scanned through the list of suspects, trusted generals, and high-ranking officials in Nerila's guard, all secretly linked to the traitors. Cole's stomach churned with the weight of what he knew. If the palace was under siege tonight, if these traitors acted on their plans, it would be Nerila's life on the line. He moved quickly, keeping to the shadows, his armor silent, and barely a whisper of metal against fabric. He'd memorized the layout of the palace. Every turn, every secret door, every guard post. He knew the palace like the back of his hand. Then, just as he was nearing the royal chambers, the first explosion shook the ground. The palace's walls trembled with a violent force, and Cole's heart raced. It wasn't a drill. This was real. Damn it, he muttered under his breath. He knew this was the beginning. Nerila had to be moved to safety, and fast. He ran down the hall, ducking under the archway, and into a side passage. But as he rounded a corner, he almost collided with the princess herself. Nerila stood there, her face pale but determined. She wore her combat armor now, no longer the elegant royal attire, but the practical, battle-ready gear of a true warrior. I knew it was coming, she said quietly. The traitors made their move. Cole didn't waste time. We need to get you out of here. Now. Without another word, they turned and rushed through the narrow hallways. Cole's hand gripped her wrist tightly, pulling her through the maze of passages that only a few in the palace knew. Behind them, the sounds of chaos grew louder. Shouting, the clash of steel, and the sharp crack of gunfire. The palace was under attack, and the enemies were inside. Nerila didn't seem afraid. Her eyes were sharp, focused. The weight of her responsibility didn't faze her. She had been trained for this, but Cole could feel her tension, the way she held her breath with each new blast that rocked the palace. The two of them reached a safe room, a hidden chamber beneath the royal quarters. The door closed behind them with a soft thud. They were momentarily shielded from the madness above. I need to send a message to my people, Nerila said, moving to a communication console. We need reinforcements. Cole nodded but kept his eyes on the door. He could hear the sounds of footsteps growing louder. Someone was coming. "They're not far behind us," he said, taking a position near the door. Nerila's eyes met his. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Cole answered. "But we can't stop now. If they find us here, it's over." She nodded, her gaze hardening. "Then let's make sure they don't." Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud crash. A group of armed traders stepped in, weapons drawn. They had found them. But Cole wasn't about to let them take Nerila without a fight. His heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his sidearm, ready to protect the princess. The door splintered under the force of the traders' assault. Cole barely had time to react before the first enemy entered. He fired a quick shot, sending the attacker stumbling back into the hallway. But more followed, guns raised and faces hidden behind helmets. The traders were determined to capture Nerila, and they wouldn't hesitate to kill anyone who stood in their way. Nerila's eyes flashed with determination as she reached for her own sidearm. The blaster at her side was small, but she knew how to use it. The fight was far from over. "Stay close," Cole shouted, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her back towards the far corner of the room. The walls shook as gunfire echoed through the narrow corridor outside. "We can't stay here," Nerila said, her voice steady despite the danger. "We need to get to the escape tunnels." Cole glanced around quickly. "Lead the way," he said. He could feel the adrenaline rushing through him, but his mind was clear. He couldn't let Nerila fall into the hands of the traders. The two of them sprinted toward the secret passage hidden behind an old tapestry. Nerila worked quickly, pulling aside the heavy fabric to reveal a small lever. She yanked it, and with a soft click, the hidden door creaked open. Cole didn't hesitate. He stepped through first, then grabbed Nerila's arm again, pulling her inside just as a blast of gunfire tore through the space they had just occupied. They were in the tunnels now, moving through the narrow, dimly lit passageways beneath the palace. The air was cool, but the tension between them was anything but. Nerila moved swiftly, knowing exactly where to go, while Cole stayed close behind, constantly looking over his shoulder. The further they went, the more the sound of battle faded, replaced by the quiet hum of ancient ventilation systems. Nerila led him down another steep flight of stairs, her footsteps echoing against the stone. "We're almost there," she said, her voice low but urgent. Cole kept his eyes on the rear of their path, watching for any signs of movement. "Do you think they'll catch us?" "Not if we're fast enough," Nerila answered, her eyes narrowing. "These tunnels have been forgotten by most. Few know how to navigate them." As they moved deeper into the underground, Cole felt a wave of relief, but it was short-lived. The sound of footsteps ahead made his heart race. "Someone's coming," Cole whispered, pulling Nerila to a stop. They quickly ducked behind a set of old stone pillars, hiding in the shadows. Cole's breathing slowed as he listened, trying to catch any sound that would give away their position. He couldn't risk Nerila being seen. The footsteps grew louder, but they didn't stop. It was as though the traders were searching for them in the wrong area. Cole held his breath, not daring to move a muscle. Nerila gave him a quick nod, signaling it was time to move again. They crept through the darkness, their footsteps light and silent. Every second felt like a lifetime. Finally, they reached a door. Nerila pushed it open, revealing the hidden chamber with a small old transport ship waiting inside. "This is it," she said. "We're getting out of here." Cole didn't say a word. He just followed her as she climbed into the cockpit. The engines hummed to life, ready for takeoff. As they flew away from the palace, the chaos of the battle behind them, Cole allowed himself a moment to relax. But he knew this wasn't over yet. Nerila was still in danger, and so was the entire planet. The storm raged outside the small transport ship as it flew through the night sky. Rain hammered against the hull, and lightning streaked across the darkened clouds. Inside, the dim lights flickered, casting long shadows across the cockpit. Cole sat in the co-pilot's seat, his fingers tight around the controls as he navigated through the violent weather. Nerila sat next to him, her face set in concentration. She kept glancing at the ship's radar, tracking any movement that might suggest they were being followed. For a moment, they both sat in silence, the only sound the steady hum of the ship's engines and the howl of the wind outside. "We lost them," Cole said after a while, his voice calm but filled with a sense of urgency. "For now." Nerila nodded, her eyes still focused on the screen. "For now," she repeated. "But the traitors won't stop. They'll be coming after us." She didn't seem scared, though. If anything, she seemed even more determined. Cole could see the strength in her eyes. She was a warrior, born to lead her people. And yet now she was forced to run, forced to trust a human soldier she had once mocked. He glanced at her, his expression serious. "What happens next? Where do we go?" "There's a safe house in the mountains," Nerila said, her voice steady. "It's an old palace, hidden from most eyes. Only my most trusted allies know about it." Cole's brow furrowed. "How far is it?" "Not far, but the storm will make the journey harder," she replied. "We have to move quickly, but cautiously. If we get caught in the open, we'll be easy targets." The ship rocked slightly as another gust of wind slammed into them, but it held steady. Cole adjusted the controls, keeping the ship on course. "Do you trust these allies of yours?" he asked, glancing at her. Nerila's eyes flickered with something. Doubt, maybe. But she quickly masked it with her usual calm. "I do. They've been loyal to my family for years. But loyalty can change quickly. I won't take any chances." There was something in her tone, a hint of uncertainty, but Cole didn't press her. He knew what it was like to have to rely on others in times of danger. You had to trust them, even when it felt risky. The rain began to fall harder, and the ship veered slightly as they hit a patch of turbulence. The storm outside seemed endless, the thunder growling like a warning from the heavens. "We should be getting close," Nerila said, breaking the silence. She pointed ahead, where a faint outline of jagged mountain peaks appeared through the storm's fury. Cole adjusted the ship's speed, carefully flying between the mountains. The weather made it difficult to see, but Nerila's steady hand on the controls helped guide him. "You know," Cole said after a long pause, "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to be running for my life with an alien princess." Nerila gave a small, almost amused smile. "Neither did I." They both shared a brief, quiet laugh, but underneath it, there was an unspoken understanding. They were in this together now, and together, they would face whatever came next. The mountains grew closer. Soon, they would reach safety, but Cole knew the danger wasn't over. Not yet. The ship descended through the thick clouds, the mountains looming ahead. The storm was still fierce, but Nerila's calmness seemed to steady the ship as they neared the hidden palace. Cole kept his eyes on the controls, his hand steady on the ship's wheel. He could feel the weight of what they were about to do. Their survival depended on how well they handled what was coming. The palace, nestled between jagged peaks, appeared in the distance like a shadow rising from the earth. The ancient structure was covered in ivy and hidden by natural rock formations, almost as if it had been forgotten by time. It was a perfect place to hide, but Cole knew it would also be a perfect target if the traitors found it. "There it is," Nerila said, her voice calm, but her eyes scanning the surroundings. Cole nodded. "Let's land and get inside. We don't have much time." He skillfully guided the ship through the narrow canyon that led to the hidden palace, avoiding the sharp rocks that jutted out like teeth. The storm made the landing difficult, but he managed to set the ship down gently on a flat stretch of ground near the palace entrance. Once the ship was secure, Nerila quickly moved to the back of the ship to gather their supplies. Cole followed, checking their weapons and making sure they were both prepared for whatever was ahead. "I'll lead the way," Nerila said as she opened the door to the palace. "We need to get inside quickly. There's a hidden control room where I can send a signal to my people. If they're still loyal, they'll come." Cole nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that the traitors were already closer than they realized. Every step they took inside the palace felt like a countdown. They moved quickly through the old corridors, their footsteps echoing in the silence. The palace was beautiful, but it had an air of neglect, as though it hadn't been used in centuries. Dust covered the furniture, and the walls seemed to whisper with the secrets of the past. Nerila led him down a set of stairs to a small, hidden room. It was filled with old maps and data consoles, tools from another time. She immediately moved to the main console and began typing quickly, her fingers moving over the keys with practiced ease. "We have to send the message now," she said, her face tight with concentration. "If we wait too long, it'll be too late." Cole glanced back toward the palace's entrance. He could feel the tension building. They were so close to safety, but something told him that danger was right behind them. "Do you really think they'll come?" Cole asked, his voice low. Nerila didn't look up from the console, but her voice was firm. "They have no choice. The traitors have already made their move. My people won't let them win." Cole trusted her, but he knew that nothing was certain in a battle like this. The traitors had infiltrated the palace, and if they had any idea where Nerila was, they would stop at nothing to hunt her down. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway outside the room. They were close, too close. "We don't have much time," Nerila said, standing up and turning toward the door. "They're here." Cole moved to the door, positioning himself to block it. The message had been sent. Now they had to survive long enough for reinforcements to arrive. The footsteps grew louder, echoing through the narrow halls of the old palace. Cole's heart raced as he stood by the door, his hand gripping the hilt of his weapon. His eyes flicked to Nerila, who was already moving toward the back of the room, preparing for what was coming. "They're almost here," Cole said, his voice low but steady. "We don't have much time." Nerila glanced back at him, her face tight with determination. "We need to hold this position. Once they enter, we won't have a chance to escape." Cole nodded, his mind racing. The palace had been a refuge. Now it felt like a trap. He had been prepared for a fight, but he never expected to face enemies so close. The traitors, they had to be fast, efficient, and ruthless. He could hear their voices now, speaking in hushed tones outside the room, planning their next move. "Ready?" Nerila whispered, pulling a blaster from her side. "Always," Cole replied, keeping his gaze fixed on the door. The first traitor burst into the room, his blaster raised, but he never had a chance to react. Cole was faster, his shot hitting the man square in the chest. The traitor crumpled to the floor, his body slumping in an instant. Nerila didn't waste a second. She was already moving to the second door, where more footsteps sounded. She fired with deadly precision, the blast hitting another traitor in the shoulder, sending him staggering back. "They're coming in waves," Cole warned. "We have to keep them out." Nerila didn't respond. She just moved faster, her eyes scanning for the next threat. Her control of the situation was impressive. Each shot was calculated, each movement smooth and practiced. She was no longer the princess of Velthera. She was a warrior, just like Cole. Outside the room, the noise grew louder, more traitors entering the palace in force. Their footsteps were joined by the unmistakable sound of heavy boots. Cole's pulse quickened. Reinforcements had arrived, but were they here to help or to hunt them down? A loud bang echoed from the hallway, followed by the creak of the door as it began to open. Cole didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward it, reaching for a heavy metal bar near the wall. In one smooth motion, he shoved it against the door, locking it from the inside. Nerila quickly scanned the room for any possible escape routes. "We can't hold this forever," she said, glancing at the door. "We need to get to the upper levels. The escape shuttle is hidden in a chamber above." Cole's eyes narrowed. "How do we get there without being caught?" "There's a passage through the service tunnels." Nerila's voice was calm, but Cole could see the urgency in her eyes. "We can slip past them if we move quickly." Just as she finished speaking, another explosion shook the palace. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the room. Cole took a deep breath. He had no choice but to trust her. "We move now," he said, his voice firm. He moved to the side, signaling Nerila to follow him. As they ran through the halls, the sounds of battle followed them. But they didn't stop. They couldn't afford to. The escape tunnel was narrow and dimly lit, the walls slick with moisture. Cole and Nerila moved swiftly through the passage, their footsteps muffled by the soft hum of the old palace's underground system. The storm still raged above them, but down here it was eerily silent, except for the faint sound of their breathing and the distant noise of the battle above. They didn't stop, not even when Nerila's hand brushed against the cold stone walls, her fingers trembling slightly. The palace was alive with chaos, and each second they wasted meant one less chance of escape. "We're almost there," Nerila said quietly, her voice steady despite the tension. "The shuttle is just ahead." Cole glanced at her. He could tell that she was exhausted, her face pale from the stress, but her determination was unshaken. For all her royal stature, she had proven herself to be a warrior, strong, sharp, and willing to do what it took to survive. "After this is over," Cole said, keeping his eyes on the dark path ahead, "what happens then?" Nerila didn't immediately answer. For a long moment, she stayed silent, as if lost in thought. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know," she said softly. "I can't go back to the palace. Not after everything that's happened. The traitors won't stop until they have control. I have to find a way to stop them. But," she sighed, "I can't do it alone." Cole understood her hesitation. The weight of her family's kingdom rested on her shoulders, and right now, it seemed like everything was slipping through her fingers. The traitors had betrayed her people, and there was no telling how many of her own allies were working against her. "You won't be alone," Cole said, his voice firm. "I'm with you." For the first time since their journey began, Nerila looked at him directly. Her gaze softened, the hardness in her eyes giving way to something deeper, a flicker of gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, but before Cole could respond, they reached the end of the tunnel. A small door, almost hidden in the stone, stood before them. It was the last barrier before freedom. Nerila pushed open the door, revealing a small, sleek transport shuttle waiting in the dim light. Its engines hummed softly, ready for takeoff. The sight of it brought a rush of relief to Cole's chest, but he knew this wasn't over yet. The danger was still very real. "Let's go," Nerila said, her voice steady again as she moved toward the shuttle's controls. They climbed aboard quickly, and within moments, the shuttle was lifting off the ground. The storm outside seemed to fade as they rose higher into the sky, but the feeling of escape was short-lived. Cole knew that wherever they went, they couldn't stop running until the traitors were dealt with. Nerila glanced at him as the shuttle powered through the storm clouds, her eyes softening. "You know," she said quietly, "you were right. I laughed at your armor. I laughed at you. And I was wrong." Cole met her gaze, his lips curving into a slight smile. "It's okay. I didn't come here for your approval." For the first time since they met, Nerila smiled back, genuine, unguarded. The tension between them lifted, replaced by an unspoken bond forged in battle, survival, and trust. "We'll make it," Nerila said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. Cole nodded. Together. As the shuttle soared into the night sky, the storm behind them began to clear. Ahead, there was nothing but endless space, an open path, where the future was uncertain, but the two of them would face it side by side.